What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome into the Bulls Report. And on today's show, we are going to be going over 3 Lonzo Ball trade ideas to help the Chicago Bulls move on. Obviously, we got that Lonzo Ball update about a week ago now where the report came out that Lonzo Ball could potentially never be playing basketball again. So we're going to go over 3 trade ideas. Maybe a team wants to take a chance on Lonzo Ball and hope that he could come back and kind of get back to his old form. Get back to that 2021-2022 form where he was fantastic during this season. Now, obviously, I think these trades in general are unlikely because of obviously the most recent report that Lonzo may not be ever playing again, but the Bulls Wire put out these 3 trade ideas, so we're going to talk about them. But again, Lonzo back in that 2021-2022 season where he just played 35 games, he was fantastic. Like, he was truly one of the more winning players in the NBA, and he just contributed to winning at the highest level. He finally got that 3 ball starting to fall. He fixed his form from that little janky side kind of across his body form that he had during his rookie year, but got it up to 42.3%. Obviously, he's a very good rebounder, a very good playmaker in transition for the Chicago Bulls. So overall, Lonzo, he was fantastic during that 2021-2022 season. But again, if the Bulls do have a chance to move on, I do think they should take it. So we're going to be diving into 3 trade ideas coming in from the Bulls Wire here in a second. But guys, join the Bulls Report family here. We're closing in on 2,000 subs, so thank you guys so much for everybody who has hit that subscribe button. It's a quick, easy way to help us out here at Chat Sports. We're closing in on 2,000, so if you guys aren't subscribed yet, go down there, hit that sub button. It's completely free. But the first trade idea we have is Lonzo Ball heading to the San Antonio Spurs. Kind of thought process here coming from them was, the Spurs, they're getting Victor Wembanyama. Maybe they want Lonzo to come back, obviously not for this next season, year after to kind of get him that point guard of the future. But this was a trade they threw out. The Bulls will be bringing in Doug McDermott and Zach Collins, 2 pretty solid role players in the NBA. And then the Spurs will obviously be receiving Lonzo Ball and 2 future second-round picks. Honestly, the thing that stands out to me most about this trade right now is Bulls throwing in 2 second-round picks. They already have very limited draft capital, so it's them throwing in 2 second-rounders and Lonzo Ball to just get 2 kind of mediocre players. Not the biggest fan of this. But let's dive into Doug McDermott and Zach Collins here for a second. Dougie McBuckets has actually kind of turned around his NBA career a little bit. Obviously, when the Bulls traded for him in, I believe it was the 2014 or 15 NBA draft. Have that wrong, but they gave up Gary Harris and Jurkic to get Doug McDermott, and he honestly had a slow start to his NBA career, but he's turned it around here. He's a great three-point shooter, 41.3% from the field, 45.7% from the field, and 41.3% from 3, just over 10 points a game. And Doug McDermott, just a solid role player. Then Zach Collins. Zach Collins, I've been a fan of his game actually dating back to Gonzaga. I think he's a pretty good playmaker at the center position. Obviously, he's not on the level of a guy like Jokic or Bam, but again, he just plays basketball the right way. He's a very solid player in the NBA, and I do think both these players can be very good role players. But the thing is, with the Bulls making a trade like this, again, like I say this, I feel like I'm going to say this almost every video now. You got to figure out what direction you're going. Because if you bring in these guys, I feel like this is a trade you would make where you're like, oh, we're on the verge of contending. We need to just have more role players, more shooters, just better playmakers just kind of on the floor around our stars. And now maybe if the Bulls decide, hey, we're going to move off DeMar, we're going to build around Zach LaVine, re-sign Vooch, and maybe you could get a little sign and trade for those guys at a certain point. But you just got to get around good role players like a Doug McDermott, like a Zach Collins. I love both their games as just a team and winning basketball players. Pretty much you can use any, white basketball stereotype with these guys. They honestly live up to that stereotype. Like very solid catch and shoot shooters. And Doug McDermott, we've actually seen his kind of a little mid-range game kind of get added to his repertoire as of late, especially last year. I was kind of looking at some of his highlight tape before we hopped on here. Doug McDermott, he's got more of a complete game. I think obviously he was, Creighton's all-time leading scorer, one of the all-time leading scorers in college basketball. He can obviously put the ball in the hoop. So Doug McDermott, Zach Collins for Lonzo Ball, just a first trade idea here that we have for obviously the kid Zoe. But let me know, would you trade or should the Bulls trade Lonzo Ball. If you guys had this decision, give me a T for trade, give me a P for pass, and make this pinned comment on today's video. And maybe you guys think you Bulls can't even trade Lonzo, which I'm kind of in that camp where I don't even know if the Bulls could get anything for Lonzo with how concerning his injury concerns really are. But let me know. T for trade, P for pass. This was the second trade idea thrown out there by the Bulls Wire. The Bulls, again, getting two solid role players as well. But again, in this trade, the number one thing that stands out to me, you're giving up Dalen Terry and you're giving up a second-round pick. And Dorian Finney-Smith and Patty Mills. Patty Mills, I loved his game, especially back at the Spurs. I mean, he was one of the more better playoff performers in the playoffs. You know, sneaky little comparison that just kind of sparked my head. A little Gabe Vincent in Patty Mills' game a little bit. You know, he game elevates in the playoffs. Dorian Smith, obviously a great 3-and-D guy. Let's focus in on Dalen Terry here because the Bulls would be giving him up in this trade, and I'm against it. Dalen Terry obviously barely played last season for the Bulls, but if we're looking back at his college stats from his Arizona days where he played 2 seasons there, again, his stats don't blow you off the screen. Like, this was kind of a questionable pick by the Bulls when they drafted him last year at 18th overall. They could have went a lot of other directions, but again, this draft last season wasn't really too deep, so they kind of took a chance on a kind of springy athlete. And if kind of when I was diving into Dalen Terry a little bit, and this kind of dates back to last year, these were just some pros and cons that I had about him. Pretty typical, pretty standard right here, but pro, he's a very solid athlete. Like, he's a twitchy guy, long arms, like, and it kind of slides into the second pro here. He is a good and willing defender. I think he can guard 1 through 4 at the NBA. He's fast. He can switch on to everything. But if we're talking about the cons here, it's the shooting. He's got a really janky shooting form. I don't know if he could ever really develop into a solid three-point shooter, but who knows? Maybe he could take the Lonzo Ball route, change up his form a little bit. But he's just got this weird hitch in his shot, which I just don't really think doesn't really allow a person or a player to get to the same release point every time, which is so key for a shooter, and that's where he really struggles. But he is a good off-ball player. I mean, most of his highlights, it's backdoor cuts. It's him just kind of being a product of the offense, which is not necessarily a bad thing. He's a team basketball player. So Dalen Terry, just overall, I don't want to move off him from right now, so that's why I don't really think that trade would kind of entice me too much. But the last trade, this is you guys are gonna love this one. Lonzo Ball to the Suns, and you know this trade from the Suns' perspective, I guess makes sense. You know, obviously they have Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and they want that other piece. And maybe they could take a chance on maybe, you know what, we'll believe in Lonzo. We'll hope he gets healthy, and we'll see what happens. But the Bulls, they would receive 37-year-old Chris Paul, Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, and a second-round pick heading to Phoenix for Lonzo Ball. Honestly, if I'm the Phoenix Suns, I love this trade. Like, obviously you're taking a chance on Lonzo Ball getting healthy, but from the Suns' perspective here, why not do this trade? I mean, like, seriously, like, you're getting a solid role player in Alex Caruso, was just first-team all-defense. Again, one of the better perimeter defenders in the NBA. And then also Lonzo Ball, if you were ever to get healthy, like, that's what made the Bulls so successful during that one season, was when they had Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, and then they had to pair that up with the scoring of Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. Like, imagine having the defense of Lonzo and Caruso, pair that up with the shooting and the scoring ability of KD and Devin Booker. I think the Suns, this trade entices me a lot for the Suns, but from the Bulls' perspective, this trade doesn't make any sense to me at all. If you were going to move off, you know, Zoe and Caruso, I think this would kind of commit to a full rebuild for the Chicago Bulls. So it doesn't really make sense why you want to bring in a Chris Paul. Like, legitimately, if the Bulls ran out a lineup next season of Chris Paul, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, let's just say Patrick Williams, and Nikola Vucevic, yes, there's a bunch of great names in that starting 5, but I don't really think that gets you anywhere. I think that's a first-round exit team, and we've really seen the decline in Chris Paul's game over the past couple of years. He's still a maestro at that point guard position. He's still a great floor general. He can run an offense better than 99% of the point guards in the world right now, but he has lost a step, and the whole thing with Chris Paul that we keep going back to is those big-time playoff performances. It's been haunting him his entire NBA career. It's those key Game 6s, those key Game 7s in the playoffs, and he just hasn't really lived up to, I guess, his regular season expectations, where he has been one of the best point guards in the league for many years. So that trade doesn't really make any sense to me at all for the Chicago Bulls. Obviously, you're giving up Caruso and Zoe and a second rounder, so not really too You're not really giving up too much for those or for Chris Paul. But again, it's what direction do the Bulls want to go? Like, do you want to kind of commit to rebuilding, or do you want to commit to kind of going all in and being a true contender? And adding Chris Paul, I just don't really think that does either. I think that just kind of leaves the Bulls still in this NBA purgatory type of zone. But overall, let me know, what was your favorite trade idea here? We'll run through them one more time. These are all centered around Lonzo Ball. And again, I don't think it's likely that the Bulls could ever pull off a trade like this. But again, you never really know. We got the Nets trade where they're getting Lonzo, or they're giving up Lonzo and Dalen Terry, and then the Suns trade, we're giving up Lonzo and Caruso for Chris Paul. So let me know, what was your favorite trade, 1, 2, or 3, which we went over. So let me know down in the comments section. But overall, guys, I don't think a trade ends up happening for Lonzo Ball. I just don't really think a team wants to take that risk, frankly, on a guy that hasn't played in damn near a year and a half at this point. He's not going to play for 2.5 years, and even if he does come back from this surgery, you know, what type of player are we going to get from Lonzo Ball? It's really still one of the more heartbreaking stories in the NBA. But those are 3 trade ideas. You know, the Bulls could get some solid role players. You could also move off that contract, which I probably should have mentioned at the beginning of the video. Lonzo is making around $20 to $23 million each of the next 3 seasons. So, again, Lonzo, heartbreaking story in the NBA, but those are 3 trade ideas that the Bulls could possibly do around Lonzo Ball. Make sure you guys follow me on Twitter, tweeting about the Bulls all off-season long. I just hope the Bulls make some moves soon. They got to do something. They got no draft picks. I want them to restart, get younger, get more athletic. But anyways, see you guys next time. Go Bulls.